As I mentioned in the text, the kind of advanced organiser, phenomenological. Don't be spooked by the term. It has its roots in a particular school of philosophy that focuses on how subjective experience works, how people make meanings at a personal level through their experience. So as we go through this, you'll see how it pans out in practice. Okay. Basic idea is we give students the most authentic experience possible relating to engineering ethics. And the important point here is to focus not on big accident producing incidents. Not that there's anything wrong in doing that, but to be more about focusing on the everyday experience in which ethical issues are encountered and dealt with by practitioners. And these can involve everything from communication in which there are innuendos about giving preference to people, or where there are issues to do with costing factors balanced against safety factors, the kind of more mundane but everyday value-laden issues. So students are asked to investigate the world of ethical engineering practice through the phenomenological question. That is a very basic experiential question of what is it to be an ethical engineer? This approach has been put forward by Amnon and Al. So it's a fairly recent development. The full paper can be read later and will be hyperlinked. Now then, the phenomenological approach, just to provide some reinforcement here, is focusing on everyday, mundane, ordinariness, the essences of engineering ethical decision making. And the aim is to get students to understand, to experience, describe and empathise with the real world phenomena of being an ethical engineer. So the idea is that they are able to empathise, take on the identity, and by taking on the identity, look at those everyday issues and apply the basic notion of ethical reasoning which we outlined earlier. So the methodology is on the next slide. So in real world situations, people will be reading information. So in this case, the student will read assignments. In real life situations, we talk to our colleagues who experience similar scenarios. So for the students, they will be interviewing practicing engineers, looking at engineering and technology research from ethical perspectives. Remember, we talked about the green technologies and that these issues are going to be emerging more and more. And they do a piece of work in which is a final essay that addresses the question, what is it to be an ethical engineer? And that can be used for assessment. So that's the basic overview of the strategy. It breaks down into a number of stages which are below, and I'm not going to read these out, but the basic idea is they're using an acronym here called RESOLVED. And if you look through this, you'll see it makes perfect sense. You've got to understand the context, history, background. You've got to be able to see what the ethical problem or issue is in a particular scenario, think about possible solutions and the probable outcomes of each main solution. So the idea is that you do some cognitive mapping. In other words, good critical thinking, right? A little bit of creative thinking sometimes if you have to generate possibilities. And then the idea is to be able to identify, predict the impact of each main solution on the different stakeholders, people's lives. And then be very clear about those underpinning values that may be upheld or violated by each of the solutions. So you're doing a good analysis here of the broad principles, the underpinning values, which, as we know, are bound up with beliefs and ultimately perceptions. So their students will then go on, as they work through this process, to evaluate the main solutions and outcomes, like the impact, values upheld, etc., and compare the possible solutions and weigh them. So it's a comparison and contrast process. In other words, all the types of thinking that aren't necessary for good critical thinking. And then ultimately, as in all life situations, you have to make a decision about which solution is best, and to state it, clarify it, justify it, and be able to defend that decision against any objections. So this is as good a set of heuristics for developing ethical reasoning in an authentic learning situation.